Non vedo. Ecco, c'è un filmato di 8 minuti che è un saluto dall'Australia di Alan Rosen e Vivian Miller per i 40 anni della legge 180 e l'impatto in Australia di questa cosa. E siamo molto contenti di averlo ricevuto. È un piccolo film, quindi lo mandiamo. Poi lascio il posto al dottor Renzo Bon, che coordina la sessione del pomeriggio.
Buongiorno.
Sulle riforme in Europa e in altri paesi.
Buongiorno a tutti. Ci dispiace che non possiamo essere a Trieste per questi 3 giorni. È importante celebrare i 40 anni della legge 180. Sono Vivian Miller di Sydney, Australia, e Alan Rosen anche di Sydney, Australia.
Hi.
Hello to everyone. We're sorry that it's not possible for us to be in Trieste for these 3 days. It is important to celebrate the 40 years since Law 180. The 1978 law was an important milestone in the reform of Italian mental health services. Major changes had been happening in some parts of Italy, e.g. Gorizia, Parma, Perugia, Trieste, through the 1960s, leading to the law to close the psychiatric hospitals in 1978. Reforms are not sudden. They come about through a confluence of people, places, political forces, expertise, and compassion. This gathering of people at Democracy and Community Mental Health is one such confluence. We have visited Trieste many times over the past 20 years and always learn more with every visit. We've also developed important and good friendships with people involved in mental health in Trieste during those years. We hope that the learning is mutual, that we can and will continue to learn from each other. Countries around the world are in various stages of mental health reform. Some have closed the large psychiatric hospitals. Some have well-developed community-based mental health services. Some provide services and programs which are well-researched. Some are innovative. Some are traditional. It is important not to judge, but to see ourselves as travellers along the road to reform where mental health services are accessible, relevant, and available when needed, services that you and I would be proud to provide and to receive. We wish you well.
Saluti dall'Australia. Hi everybody, we wish we were with you. We can't be with you at this time. And we think it is a very important occasion, both the celebration of the 40th year of the Italian reforms and its repercussions through the world, and also the deliberations that follow from reflection about this. Well, our reflections on our visits and stays in Trieste and in other parts of Italy and seeing these reforms point to us what are the most important issues, some of the most important issues that have had ripples throughout the world. One has been the importance of having a coherent vision, and that vision by both Franco Basaglia and Franca Basaglia, who helped implement it into a law, and also helped conceive what these reforms should be, plus the foundation group, who are still well represented in further developing these reforms today. Secondly, not just the 1978 law, but the importance of allowing time for the hospitals to find some high-quality accommodation and in the community and high-quality living circumstances in the community so that everybody could move gradually out of the hospital and into the community. That seemed to be brought into focus, particularly by the 1998 tax laws, which concentrated the minds of the hospital in completing the closure of the hospitals so that the reforms could continue in the community. Some of the solutions that are suggested by these reforms and the work that we have to do worldwide in furthering the impact of these reforms is, first of all, these reforms have systematized human rights, or have been trying to systematize human rights as well as they could. And that includes finding that there is a promising and emerging evidence base to suggest that some of the issues that are covered by UNCRPD are therapeutic, like freedom is therapeutic, as we see in posters around the Italian mental health sites, and also that the importance of personal control for of your own mental health personal package, etc. So the second set of circumstances that we have been learning is about the social movements and how this has not just been a series of legal or clinical reforms, but it has been solidly backed by the wider community in Italy, or large parts of it. And we have seen evidence of that with the more recent movement to close the forensic hospitals. And we were there at the beginning of that campaign, and we saw how many different interest groups, like the students and the unions and the communes and the general public, got involved in this movement, and so that it was supported by a wider public, so that the politicians had to take notice. But we think this is something that we need to attend to worldwide, because we all had reform movements developing around the same time in the 60s and the 70s, but they were not connected and they were not coordinated. And I think we now need a organisationally and also in networking, we need a wider social movement throughout the world, particularly throughout the middle to high income countries, to try and get these social movements going to back real reform towards community mental health. Thirdly, we need a high quality evidence base. We know from some of the descriptive studies and very powerful descriptive studies that there have been less suicides and less homicides where these reforms are well developed, even when there have been many less hospital admissions and much less use of involuntary orders and heavy-handed technologies. So we know that this is possible anecdotally and from descriptive studies, but we do need multi-site studies, and we need high-level evidence studies to replicate this, because we know this is the currency that governments use in order to get leverage to implement these reforms in other countries. So we wish you well in your further deliberations. We congratulate all of you for your efforts in your various countries to progress these reforms. We wish we were with you, and we wish you well in your further deliberations, and bye-bye.
Good afternoon. I am Renzo Bong. Actually, I'm the director of the mental health department in Udine, a town very close to Trieste, and I worked for 20 years here. I will present this group of a session because Luciano Carrino, who should coordinate the second part, couldn't come. I have a little problem that is, I can summarize it this way. How can you put 10 liters in a bottle of 5 liters? Because we have a lot of speakers with very interesting things, and we have a short time, and the organization asked me to put also 10 minutes for relax in the middle. I don't know how I can manage, I ask all the colleagues to help me in this. I will start cutting my presentation. I will just tell two things. One is advertising. This is the book related to the movie that was done about Franco Basaglia's experience. And we have also the DVD in Italian and in English, so also for the people coming from other countries, if they are interested, please. It's a very, very interesting document. Now, I will not make my presentation, but I will read a short letter sent by Dainius Puras, who was the chairman of this report of the Special Rapporteur on the rights of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of the physical and mental health. It was approved in the UN Assembly last year on March, and it's, I think, is the framework about these issues. I put some, after this, some highlights of this document of 20 pages that I suggest you to read. I will not show this part. I think that it will be possible to find in the documents of the presentation. Now I am Dainius Puras. Dear hosts and participants of the conference, I regret that I am not able to join all of you on this very special occasion, 40 years of the Italian Law 180. Let me share some thoughts in written. Importance of mental health is now increasingly recognized at the highest level by the UN General Assembly and Human Rights Council in the WHO and by governments. Mental health is finally out of shadows, and there are many good attempts to address and reduce treatment gap through investing more in mental health services. However, we should never forget, and we should always keep reminding to all stakeholders and to ourselves that the most important preconditions for realization of the right to mental health is that human rights approach is fully and most seriously integrated in all mental health policies and services. We need to learn painful lessons of history when psychiatry, often with good intentions, was involved and continues to be involved in policies and services that appear to do more harm than good. We all need to do more to revitalize spirit and practices that were born in Trieste and resulted in famous Italian Law 180 of 1978. I remember myself reading about Franco Basaglia and his work when I was a young doctor. And since then, I have a dream, and I want to contribute to making it a reality. This dream is that dignity and freedom may and must prevail over discrimination, coercion, humiliation, and hopelessness in the field of mental health care and psychiatry. We need to turn this dream into reality. We need to keep strengthening the coalition of people and organizations who are on the side of freedom, psychiatry recovered from dependency on coercion and the monopoly of power. We should admit that current status quo in global psychiatry and mental health care, because of existing power symmetries and exceptions that allow to undermine freedom, dignity, and autonomy, paves the way and fuels epidemics of institutionalization and other human rights violations. This means that a paradigm shift is needed for global mental health, And the direction of that shift was clearly indicated 40 years ago toward the spirit and practice of Franco Basaglia and Trieste. For this change to happen, we need to revitalize spirit of Trieste globally and to spread and replicate in all regions and countries the services that are empowering, participatory, and human rights compliant. This is needed not only for those who use services so that human rights abuse end. This is needed for psychiatry to restore its image and reputation and to go hand in hand with basic principles of modern medicine and first of all with the principle do no harm. I wish you a fruitful conference and let us continue working together in this direction. Dainius Pura. Well, thank you to Dr. Puras for this speech. I hope I read it enoughly in a rapid but comprehensible way. And now we start immediately giving young Pfeiffer, is our first speaker from Czech Republic. And I give you yes.
Good afternoon. Then I will try to present shortly the situation in the country which was one of the, let's say, we name it Eastern European, even it is like a Middle European territory. You see the Vienna is more on the east, but nevertheless, I think it's a political term and it's important still that these countries, this territory lost from 1948 or just around that time contact with the Western developments, and there were some windows opportunities, but basically until 1990 it went its own way, which was very much like old-fashioned, very controlling, very paternalistic system. In 1990, I think, especially in our country, probably in other countries, it was like a lot of expectation and hope and a lot of energy. We had Václav Havel president. He was very much for a civic society development. And that time, a lot of people who were working before in the formal services start to develop alternatives. And originally, we tried to do it under the healthcare, but it was still very rigid. That a lot of these people move under social health care, which that time was very relatively open to the experiments and open to the really human type of work. And I think it was very important because it created a strong base of different kind of thinking, but also services, which are just now very strong base for developing a new service integrated together. That from it was about 5 years, very strong, very energetic time. Then the energy go down, and still something were developed, some strategies, some pilots, whatever. But it seems like that just now there is another window opportunity, and I will talk about that, what's going on. I think you can see that from that 1990, the capacity of the classical big large institution as this one was in the past that go down, and the community services were slightly developed. But it was not really like a process. It just happened. The important was the regulation of structural funds, because just they could play, and I think in this our case probably play quite important role. And originally the politicians, Ministry of Health, expected use this money for refurbishing of all these old asylum institutions. That they asked for the money, for quite big substantial amount of money, to use them for that refurbishing. But finally, what happened, that there were new regulation in Brussels which stopped the use of structural funds for refurbishing of institutions. And if you ask for them, you have to use them for the real structural change. And that's happened, that there were money, and that just the ministry said, okay, we have a money, then we have to do the structural changes. Just, it seems like a joke, and of course it will not happen when all these, what I said, all this movement and people who are already being in a place. But nevertheless, it was some kind of by chance situation, and I think the process started. And there were some kind of agreement of the new strategy, which has basically all important elements. Maybe it was quite broad, but it gave some kind of a general view on the future. And it was basically about what we talk here, that just the institutional services has go down and community services has to be developed. But it was also about the changing paradigm. Where we are just now, that in the country which has 10 million people, for the healthcare, for the mental health care, we have something like a little bit more than 3% of the health budget, and altogether it's about 400 million euro what goes for the for the mental health services. That they are like still big psychiatric hospitals, about 17. There are the departments of general hospitals, and there are quite different kind of community services. When we look on the let's say type of the problems in psychiatric hospitals, the adult psychiatrist makes a half of the beds, which 2/3 are acute admissions and 1/3 are long stay, which altogether there is about 1,000 longer stay clients. And there is big problem is geriatry, of course, psychogeriatry, and problem is drug and alcohol. That the reform which is going on, it seems like having relatively strong leadership. It's really under the Ministry of Health, but with a strong link, or relatively strong link, with the Ministry of Social Welfare, but also Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Regional Development, and all these bodies are in executive committee, including the insurance companies. That there is international board, and there is also in every region, we have a 14 region, some kind of platform for DI. And there are the main topics, which is of course financing and discussing with insurance, which seems like insurance is opened to reschedule the resources. And they say if you develop one community mental health team, which it's about 20 people working in the community, then you have to close 15 beds. And it's something what goes on, and we will finance it. That there is every of these institutions is busy with a robust transformation plan. In 15 years, all beds has to be closed down and alternatives has to be developed in the community. And there is a relatively robust program of supporting, developing this mostly community mental health teams for different kind of groups, that for the elderly, for the adults, of course, for children, for drug and alcohol, that roughly one such team, 400,000 inhabitants. For the community mental health teams or community mental health centers, we are talking about 20 people working in that area. And it is of course about also about coordination, because system is quite fragmented, and about anti-stigma. That I think that the main problems of the system, like the still hyperprotective approach, fragmentation, the allocation, how the budget is allocated, and division health and social, that all these problems, there is some kind of, let's say, program which try to answer and support the further development. It became really like a movement. It's not like the one person, one man show. I think it's really hundreds of people involved, and including families and users and NGOs and statutory organization. That the system tries step by step be really like a coordinated, linking with the primary health care, having a gatekeeping system, being linked with the inpatient services, and especially with the social services, and with the resources in the community, which I think those organization, which I said on the beginning, they were developed under social care. They really have a skills to work, to involve community, to work with the open market, jobs, open market, etc. That there is a plan of, and we started already, plan of step-by-step developing this on the first wave, 30 community mental health teams, which are very much like working in the community, doing home treatment, having partly also crisis intervention function, but being very much like working with the community. And the step-by-step, there is a plan to have 100 such teams. It means shortly there will be something like about 3,000 people working in the community. I think what is quite original that we try to develop these teams using resources which are these social services, which are, as I said, very much recovery and inclusive oriented, and with the resources in the hospital which are quite old-fashioned, but nevertheless it's already go on, and it means that you have 10 staff, nurses, doctors, the psychologists, and mainly social workers, creating like the one functional team. And of course it's not easy, it takes some time, but the results seems to be very promising, that finally there is a new type of culture which looks very promising, I think. Of course, the very important is also to work with the geriatric, in general geriatric service, because we have quite a lot beds occupied by psychogeriatry, and I think it's quite horrible, and these people has to be supported in the community, that there is a step-by-step system of specialized psychogeriatric community team, which will be part of whole system, which is more under geriatry than psychiatry, but it's something what's also go on step by step. I think this, as I said, is very much about how we change the culture, and a lot of resources, energy of this project is focused on it. Just how to, from this institutional culture, really develop the inclusive one, and not to be sure that new services will not take this institutional culture when the staff is coming from the institution. And in the medical part, there is still very much culture of power over, but with this social services, very much a culture of power. And just now, as I said again, how we can create a new common ground for working together, not as a group, because that's how the medical service is used to work, but really as a team, which is more what the social services are doing. That I think how the legacy of this maybe 10, 15 years developing a culture under the social service bring to the healthcare, how to be recovery oriented, and how to really these two rivers will come to the new qualitative river, which will have a new color, but color which is really the users friendly and users involvement system. There are some prediction about about capacity development, that there is a plan. This is what happened in the last like calculations, that there is a plan in 7 years to do quite dramatic close down of the beds in this big asylum, and in parallel there is the development of a psychiatric department, especially community services and community housing. This is, of course, rough calculation together with the Ministry of Social Welfare, but they already plan some kind of investment in 1 or 2 years in the future. And this is also that like 75% are just now in the mental health institutional services, and hoping in a couple of 15, 30 years it will be just reverse, 60% in the community, 40% in institutional care. And I think it seems like it's a good time. The country is going well economically. There is nearly zero unemployment. Even the political situation as all Europe is not easy, but basically I think there is some optimism, and I hope that the the people start to understand, they really step in and they really have to invest. And as Mark Twain said, there are two important days in your life: when you're born and when you understand why. And I hope the people will understand there is an opportunity to they really can do the things for themselves, but for the others. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jan, because you were perfect with the time and for your very, very good presentation. Next, from the Health Ministry of Slovenia, Nada Čobal. You have to slide, okay. The same, I hope you will be good as Jan, I wish.
I hope I will be as short as possible. Sorry that I haven't prepared any PowerPoint, but I think that I will manage to emphasize the main activities on the field of deinstitutionalization in Slovenia nowadays. First, before I start, I would like to thank you for invitation and congratulate to good event and all achievement you have here in Trieste region on the field of deinstitutionalization. In Slovenia, the Mental Health Act was adopted in 2008, and in this act it was stipulated that also mental health program should follow in 1 year. It was 2009, but it was March this year, 2018, when Parliament adopted National Mental Health Plan in Slovenia. So I'm very, very happy because, as you see, it takes almost 10 years to get at the end, on the other side, at the beginning of deinstitutionalization. Because if we are oriented toward the person with mental health problems, then we should consider his or her needs, and we have to provide the services in community as precondition to any other deinstitutionalization. And mental health national program 2018 until 2028. It is oriented toward community primary health care and also community mental health treatment. It has a new paradigm not only on the field of deinstitutionalization, but also on the mental health as not focused only on mental illness, but to be focused on the promotion, prevention, and all these activities for different target groups of population. So we now plan to establish until 2028 a net of mental health centers for adults and elderly, mental health centers for child and adolescents, at the center of mental health in the community, it's on the primary level. In this mental health national plan, we also connect with the field of education and the field of social care. And first centers will be established in 2019, but in further steps we want to connect on the local level with local authorities. These fields are already mentioned, NGOs, and also other stakeholders, whoever can influence on the better mental health. So our goal is quite broad. but nevertheless, I believe that we are on the right path. Maybe it's right that I also mentioned that in 2015 we have a WHO mission on mental health in Slovenia. We invited WHO, and they stated, for example, that on paper Slovenia has a wide range of services. Each of these services is excellent in isolation. They also stated that mental hospitals, they are attractive and seem to offer decent care. But nevertheless, the problem in Slovenia is that despite the fact that we are a quite small country with only 2 million of inhabitants, there are big differences in different regions. Therefore, those hospitals are not equal accessible to all, and also too much knowledge, too much staff, too much financial resources are concentrated in the hospitals. Now it's about 80%. We want to shift this and to provide equal accessibility for whole inhabitants. We already have developed some kind of assertive community treatment. First attempts to make some community treatments, they were in 19th last century, but they were provided only by the NGOs. To become a part of public health and to get stable finance structure, reimbursement from health insurance institution of Slovenia, it is from 2012. Then assertive community treatment are provided by hospitals, and 2013 we have 4 areas where on primary health care is provided so-called flexible assertive community treatment. Now in our national mental health plan, we want to establish until 2028 that whole regions and all inhabitants will have access equal, and also that at least half of treatments will be provided at their homes or the place they are living. So maybe this for beginning, and if there are any questions, I will be glad to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the same both reasons of before, and now still from Slovenia, Vito Flaker. And I ask him to be as good in presenting and in being short as your colleagues.
I'm sorry to be late. The road conditions, I was coming from Dubrovnik, so the road conditions were not very good today, so but I got it. So I will be talking more about Macedonia, where I'm working for past year, than Slovenia. For Slovenia, I would say, besides what Nadia was saying, yes, of course, there is a lot of people also closed into social care institutions, and that discussion we had in this place and other occasions many times. I would just say that after having done a study that would pave the way for the process, that study was not really used, and there was a will for the Ministry of Social Care to establish a deinstitutionalization unit. but then the will have succeeded. But another thing that is worth mentioning about the situation in Slovenia is that there are some serious preparations for the system of long-term care, which is a parallel process to deinstitutionalization and could provide some tools in terms of finance and so on. But it is, I don't see how Slovenia will fulfill the obligation that it gave to the European Union of emptying half of the institutions by 2020, because this has not started. And I would say that at this moment we will see what will happen with the new government. Maybe somebody will appear and jump out of the box who will be willing to do something, but so far things are not looking good. On the other hand, in Macedonia things are looking good. I was there working for a year, revising the deinstitutionalization strategy and making a new one, and that was a good experience. Even before the new government was installed last summer, there was some excitement and willingness in the professional circles, but also in other circles to do something, to try again. Yeah? Being in Macedonia, it appeared to me that deinstitutionalization in many ways is a hiccup process, that it goes and it stops and goes and it stops and so on, and there are some moments where things get into the also formulate the system, sometimes not, and so on. And so this was, and this I think was happening elsewhere, and but for me in Macedonia was quite clear. Anyway, with the new government, there was even more dedication. I must say that present Minister for Social Care is a very dedicated woman coming from NGO sector, and she made this of one of her priorities to do this process. So, in the analysis we made, which is much more detailed than will be seen from these slides, we have. I will not talk about this so much, but these were the variables that we were observing. Oops. These were the variables observing how many people, what were the resettlement processes, what are the needs, institutions, and what are the existing and needed policies and services. It proved to be quite a good model to work with. One thing that is which is very surprising, not surprising, but not, marked issue in Macedonia is that institutionalization rate is very low. In all the institutions in Macedonia, excluding prisons, there are about 2,500 long-stay residents for a population of 2 million. In Slovenia, which has the same population, the number is 22,000, yeah? 10 times more. But Slovenia is one of the champions in institutionalization, also champions in how to make the deinstitutionalization a very long process also. But anyway, what I'm saying, what I wanted to say, this is an important thing, of course, but which gives us, I will go, and there was 20 years of meaningful experience in different developments in terms of deinstitutionalization. And what I would be also saying, yes, people were resettled, but no institutions were closed, like it happens many times in many countries. And what I think is, even with all the, if everything comes through what Nadia was saying regarding psychiatry, if you don't close the institution, it doesn't do much good, as we have seen in our long history in Slovenia. Anyway, what having not many people in institutions makes deinstitutionalization on one hand easier and able to perform it very in a short time, but of course people in Macedonia are not more clever or more sane or more less disabled, or they are a little bit younger than European average, but still there are quite a lot of old people. So it's not the question why these people are living in the community and cared by the community, mostly by their families. So some of the informal care is very good. Some is probably as bad as institutions, because I can remember an instance from Slovenia not that long ago, 20 years ago. There was somebody was found in a pigsty, confined and treated also as a pig. Yes, he was brought the food and so on, but he was living as a pig in the pigsty. So this is, I think, when we are considering the strategy in Macedonia, this is one of the important issues, is how to approach the informal care, how to make it more potent, and how it can provide more possibilities for the people with different kinds of difficulties. Okay, I will go. We have also seen, which is, I think, very important, when many countries, especially in this region, have developed strategies for deinstitutionalization. But mainly these strategies or action plans or programs or whatever, but strategic documents, mainly these strategies are very good in terms of content, but in terms of how to implement, they are lacking. They are lacking quite a lot of elements. Yeah? Who's gonna do what? How to change the finances to accomplish this motto that the money should follow the users. How to make people, provide people with good training to do a different job. What to do with the buildings, where to get the flats for the people, and so on, so on. Things are, these kind of issues are seldomly dealt with in a way that would make an operative consequences from such documents. So we have tried to do this better. And of course, there is also one thing which is important are the issues of management, of reorganization, and so on. And very often such documents are failing to provide even ideas, let alone the guidelines, how to do. Okay, so I will go. So what we were talking, it's not a thing that have appeared just now, but what would be a Macedonian model, and what we are heading to is, of course, to use all the instruments that have been developed and are known and so on, from the intermediate structures to the personal care packages to personal assistance, home help, and so on, but to opt as much as possible for the solutions that are close to the not only Macedonian mentality, but also kind of informal help, informal care, informal support. So what we are trying to, how we're going to go about this is to get into some good ethnographic, anthropological, epidemiological research together with people living on the locations, on the different locations, because Macedonia has quite, although it's a small country, it has very different micro or mesocultures, and to see what are the resources, not only formal but also informal resources, how to and then develop what we would say micro projects and indirect interventions for the community to be stronger, to keep on caring for their members in the who are in need of help. Also, one thing that is important to mention, which many of you have full head of and have heard many times, but I think it is important, is how to, of course, for the people who are now in institutions, there should be intermediate structures, day centers, group homes, and so on, to make the move possible as soon as possible. But we have at the same time to see that this is not a final solution, a final step. Even and that not. I mean, of course, we know that this should not be, but often it gets forgotten. Okay, we've done the job. We emptied. We resettled people, and. So what we are trying to, what we have put in the strategy and the action plan is that immediately when people are coming to live in a group home, there should be a personal exit strategy. Yeah? It should be really only a temporary solution. Only intermediate, transitory service. Okay, what I think I said the most of important things, and what to. I didn't say particularly what will be happening for people with with intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, mental health problems, old age, and so on. But because of course things are different, but these are the general principles. So I will wish good luck to Macedonia. but things are already happening because yes, as I said, the minister and the atmosphere is promising, and there is a lot of will to do things. So let's knock on the wood that this will be a more successful story than some other stories in the neighborhood. I would also abuse this opportunity to invite you to Dubrovnik, because there is second week in September there is a workshop or course on deinstitutionalization, which is rather a slow process, slow food, not fast food like here. Yes, there is more time to more time to dwell on the issues and have discussions. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry to be late. Sorry to be long.
Okay. Thank you, Vito. So good luck to Macedonia and to all of us. Just a moment for a very important flash that Roberto will give us, very important on the historically, emotionally and artistical point of view.
È con grande piacere che è qui con noi, non lo sapevamo, anzi ce l'avevano detto che forse sarebbe venuto, ma è qui una persona speciale che ha contribuito alla creazione di un sogno e di una fantasia che ancora oggi c'è e che è diventato un simbolo che trovate davanti al teatro, cioè il Marco Cavallo. C'è un libro che descrive tutto questo, che lui ha scritto, e io vi chiedo un grande applauso per il scrittore e regista Giuliano Scabbia, che chiamerei qua. L'uomo del Marco Cavallo, l'uomo del Marco Cavallo.
Sì, mi ha acchiappato lì, stavo scappando, ma dopo tornavo per ascoltare questi discorsi. Il cavallo è di tutti, la sua forza è che è di tutti. E l'abbiamo fatto in 1200 matti, tanti medici, tanti infermieri, una città, un grande amico come Franco Basaglia, ma è di tutti, la sua forza è questa. Non appartiene a Giuliano Scabbia, non appartiene, è di tutti. Il cavallo è tutti. E ai giovani amici che ogni tanto incontro in crisi, ma devo fare questo, ma fatevi un cavallo, fatevi un cavallo, andate a trovare i vostri amici con un cavallo a bretella magari, ecco, Marco Cavallo poi non è uno psichiatra, è un cavallo vero. Grazie.
Grazie a Giuliano per tutto. Noi andiamo avanti con il nostro collega Ladislav Lanza, che viene dalla Croazia e che ci illustrerà la situazione.
Good afternoon, and buongiorno, buonasera. Thanks for invitation here. I'm so happy to be here. I will speak about the institutionalization in Croatia. Okay, 15 minutes. Okay, let's start. Okay. Just briefly about the recent history in Croatia. Croatia is a former state of ex-Yugoslavia, post-communist country with an unsolved history related to human rights. On the picture you see the citizen working brigades. We build our countries. For 50 years we were a workers' country. Even today we have a lot of and strong impact of the workers' union. One political party, the Communist Party, nurtured the ideal type of the society. An ideal socialist society had ownership over almost everything. We nurtured also hard work and good health. Like in the capitalist countries, there was no place for weakness or disabilities. Paradigm of personal guilt due to the mental disorders was there. And I put one rhetorical question: is it possible to have inclusion without democracy? In my opinion, it's not. Well, excluded, stigmatized, isolated, usually for a lifetime. For 50 years, people with disabilities were not important to our society. We were hiding people with disabilities far away from the community. In old castles, former sawmill facilities, abandoned wood factories, horse stables, warehouses, monasteries, and so on, ruined villas, etc. Mostly in abandoned and useless buildings. Mostly in a rural environment, we created large institutions with 300, some 500, some more than 1,000 users or beneficiaries, whatever we say, fence by wire or brick fence. There were people who had all sorts of disabilities, homeless people together, poor people. Same persons, two sectors. In Croatia, services for people with mental disabilities belong to the two sectors, the health sectors and the social welfare sectors. Health sectors works within a few large psychiatric hospitals in which psychiatrists and all other highly educated professionals were employed. And the sector of social welfare, led by the Ministry of Social Policy, provides services to people with mental and intellectual disabilities. On the chart, we can see the current situation in the social welfare sector. The presence of institution in high percentages obvious. Almost 90% of the providers are working in institutions, only the few institutions in transformation, and just 5% are totally community-based service providers. It is a current situation. Social welfare institutions generally employed one social worker per 100 users. There are no employed psychiatrists at all. Other staff are mostly caregivers, nurses, or technicians. In the late 20th centuries, the government continues to build institutional walls. The Ministry of Social Policy made a new categorization of users and institutions by the type of diagnosis and health conditions. Rehabilitation center, first rehabilitation center were specialized institutions only for persons with intellectual disabilities, for people with mental disabilities. We also provide facilities specialized for them. And the third are the homes for elderly people, which couldn't be used by people with mental or intellectual disabilities. The first opening the walls of institution was at 1997, the Association for Promoting Inclusion, for the first time in the history of Croatia, emphasized the basic human rights of people with intellectual and mental disabilities and promotes their rights and ability to live and work in the community instead of lifelong confinement in a segregated institution. Today, after 21 years of struggling and convincing the government about the needs and rights of people with disabilities, this NGO and the partners of that NGO provides community-based service for more than 50% of the institutionalization people, and price that is 50% lower than the cost of state institutions funded from the state budget. Serious concern for human rights or something else. When you don't know what you're doing, it's best to do it quickly. Croatia was the fourth country in the world, after Hungary, Jamaica, and Panama, who ratified the CRPD in 2007. 2 years before Italy, Denmark, Germany, European Union. What did we do next? Almost nothing until 2010. Then we made a plan, but wrongly. For them, but without them. 2010, we made a plan of the institutionalization and transformation of social welfare institution in the period of 2014-2018. But only employees, mostly directors of the institution, and not the people with disabilities or beneficiaries, decided between the three offered transformation options. The first is to transform to community service center. Only the 8% of institutions was take that opportunity. The second is to stay in the institution for long-term care. 92% was take that opportunity, and the closure of institution 0%. Results after 8 years of the institutionalization is on this chart. We have 2% people who receive the community-based service by the NGO, the 4% community-based service run by the state, that is transformed institutions, and still we have 90% of the people still in institutions. This is the annual report for the last year of the Ombudsman for Persons with Disability of the Republic of Croatia. This is the quotation. When we talk about the right of the people with disabilities to gain the right to independent living and community life, to choose their place of residence, where and with whom they will live, we feel that we are not assured of the enjoyment of this right. More than 10,000 disabled people in the Republic of Croatia today live in institutions. Only 623 people with disabilities receive community-based services. Their destiny depends on the will of the guardians and the social welfare centers who have, instead of them, decided that the life behind the locked doors of the institution is in their best interests. In an institution deprived of liberty without having committed a criminal offense spend most of their lives without the right to privacy at any personal choice. And to continue, the same report for last year from Ombudsman, in some institutions coercive measures are also being applied, contrary to the national law and convention, and without the needs for systematic monitoring of the implementation of these measures and the sanction for infringers. Systematic separation of persons with disabilities into institutions contrary to their own will because they are not provided with support or service to live in the community represents their discrimination or segregation. We express concern that due to certain risks in the process of institutional transformation are primarily because of the systematic unresolved issue of resistance of workers. Further transformation will be stalled. Let's see what Human Rights Watch said about Croatia. Stalled progress for the people with disability. Thousands in institutions not allowed to make own choices. Brussels, 31st of May this year. Thousands of children and adults with disability remained trapped in institutions and a decade after Croatia ratified the International Disability Rights Treaty. Many more are denied the right to make any decisions for themselves. On May 21st, the Croatian government published a draft law on foster care that would prioritize placing adults with disabilities in foster care, including without their consent. Placing adults in foster care can limit their interaction with community and their ability to make their own decisions. Foster care is not appropriate for adults with disabilities who are placed in a family without any choice or alternative. People with disabilities have the right to live independently, with control of their lives and the ability to make individual choices with support as necessary. Any forced placement, even with a well-meaning family, should be ended. Placing adults with disabilities in foster care has been criticized by the United Nations Committee on the Rights of People with Disabilities and Croatia's Ombudswoman for Persons with Disabilities. Let's see what European Network of Independent Living said in this year about, they sent an open letter about the process of the institutionalization in Croatia. Writing to express our concerns about the recent developments in Croatia, we seek to undermine the right to live independently in the community of persons with disabilities. We are concerned that the process of deinstitutionalization has significantly slowed down under the current administration. Failure to proceed with the closure of institution and to enable persons with a disability to move from institution into community. Increasingly negative public attitudes toward the process of deinstitutionalization. Also delays in using the European funds to support the process of deinstitutionalization. The draft law on foster care, which provides for placement of adults with disability in foster care families. Foster care cannot be considered community living when it comes to adults and does not comply with the requirement of Article 90 CRPD. Let's see what Mr. Denius Pouras, reporter, special UN reporter, said when he visited Croatia before 2 years. The capacity in psychiatric institution continues to escalate. By 2016, through the institutionalization, approximately 600 persons had been moved out of institution to community-based services. The same number of people have since been institutionalized in hospitals through the healthcare system. The healthcare system, largely based on treatment in psychiatric hospitals with mainly biomedical intervention, continues to feed the institutional care system. This showed the lack of an effective gatekeeping policy in the healthcare sectors and, above all, the urgent need for coordination between the social welfare and health sectors. On the other hand, Croatia is one of the first countries to have invested community-based pilot project to end digitalization. One good practice is in the center I'm Just Like You in Osijek, and the special rapporteur visited the center and he recommended that the good practice be replicated elsewhere in Croatia and in other countries. So, okay, I will skip this because we have a lack of time. Also, World Bank and European Commission, also the setup after 3 years of progress, they are concerned about continuing of process of deinstitutionalization, and this year, 11th of June, they set up a meeting about concerning what happens in Croatia. Ups and downs Croatian policymakers. Let's see what former ministry said 2015. If it was worth something to be part of this government, then it was because of the deinstitutionalization process. Unfortunately, today in Croatia we have some cattle farms with better conditions than some social welfare institution in which our users live. We need to change that immediately. Let's see what is now current minister. What's wrong with our institutions? We invested great efforts and funds in their construction maintenance. Our workers are not satisfied with the institutionalization, and a happy, a satisfied worker in a well-organized institution is the foundation of social welfare sector in Croatia. The Ministry of Social Policy and the Ombudsman person, Croatia also have a 180, but on 180 degrees of opposite opinion. Within the reform of the social welfare system, the institutionalization of users and the transformation of social welfare institutions occupy a significant place. Let's see what Ombudsman thinks. More than 10,000 people, 10,000 disabled people in the institution in the Republic of Croatia today live in institutions. Only 623 receive community-based. Foster care is seen as the best form of care because each person placed in a foster family experiences family life. There is a noticeable increase in the number of foster family placements, which we consider to be wrong direction of the institutionalization. For this reason, it is necessary to improve foster care in the whole country. This type of care for adults with disabilities is unacceptable and contrary to CRPD. Let's see what Constitutional Republic of Croatia said in Article 58, paragraph 2. Special care is given by the state protection of persons with disability and their inclusion in social life. Let's see what the law on social welfare Republic of Croatia said. Article 9, rights in the social welfare user receive in accordance with the principle of free choice. Article 12, social services are provided to the user, if possible, in this home or local community through non-institutional forms of care to improve the quality of life and community involvement. Obviously, under the current administration, it will not be possible for 10,000 people, and just to emphasize what Ms. Daniels Pouras said, where there is a will, it is possible to end the sad legacy of institutional care. Thank you for your attention.
I ask one more clap from Ladislav because he's a witness of what happens, and he paid personally for fighting for the human rights of his patients. So I ask you to clap again, our friend. Yes, I think that all the people who speak, the people that I know and also people that I don't know, can witness. I crossed the border to Serbia. I give to the word to Vlado Jovic, who can also witness many important things. I ask to my dear friend Vlado to be in 15 minutes as all the other. Ne treba manje, dosta. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you, Renzo, for your guidance through this session. I'm coming to Trieste almost regularly since 2009, when we had the first, let's say, defeat during the process of reforms. I say defeat, I just exchanged a few words with Dr. Lanza from Croatia, and it seems that we share very similar experience, just in a different timeline. We had the same efforts, enthusiasm, a lot of energy invested in reforms in mental health strategy and new legislation. We opened the Community Mental Health Center, which was working for 3 years. Number of hospitalization was cut in half, as well as number of days spent in hospitalization was cut in half. And then we had a horrible attack which destroyed everything that we were working on for the last 5 years. The attack was well organized, and I can openly say by a bunch of criminals. Those are people who are gaining a lot from big hospitals not providing care, but being extremely well source of dirty money for their own purposes. And that's how we should address these things. This is not a dialogue between two groups of professionals. This is a dialogue between, this is attack, this is a destruction against the attempts to develop better mental health care. Now we are, I think, much smarter because we learned how to use human rights mechanisms, and that's what we should continue, and that's what Dr. Lanza mentioned, all these reports and comments, but also we should be probably more efficient, because thinking about what we did or what we didn't. We know now how for example, Committee for Prevention of Torture works. We have friends there. And we know SPT, UN Subcommittee for Prevention of Torture, or Committee Against Torture in Geneva. So we know those people. We are friends with them. And we also have many other friends with this CRPD committee and so on. So, but we just need to fight. And in the case when something happens like this example in Croatia, where the very extremely well example of deinstitutionalization is destroyed, we should act. And that means writing to committees, asking them, because they have mechanisms of ad hoc visits, and they could put a lot of pressure to the governments. While we are just waiting to things to become better, we are just losing time. So I will continue with this. I have a short presentation. So basically everything is said. We tried in 2003. We were doing quite well until 2008. Then we collapsed completely. Then we are trying to reestablish everything again. At this moment, this is what I was talking about. At this moment, the Council of Europe started last year. We started with another project where they wanted to redefine the existing mental health strategy and mental health law. And the last year they completed a couple of important tasks. They have a review of the existing legislation, which is really very critically addressed. We had a report on forensic institutions, which are extremely important during the process of the institutionalization. And also I did the assessment of the previous mental health strategy. Not much can be said, but we also have many very important documents that we can use in efforts to rebuild the new strategy and mental health law. What is the story now? If we look at the 15 years after, the situation is even worse. For example, some benefits or some advantages that we had, like a very good geographical distribution of institutions, that's still there, but at the primary health care, we lost almost half of the psychiatrists and psychiatric services in the overall country. Also, the number of beds that we calculate as a good beds or bad beds, in the sense that the bad beds are those in large institutions and good beds are in psychiatric departments in general hospitals, have shifted toward the bed way. So we have more hospitals in psychiatric hospitals, more beds in psychiatric hospitals. Also, we have absolute lack of cooperation between the health sector and social sector, and also, of course, that's the problem in all the region. It's interesting to see how the hospitals are surviving this period, because they are basically shifting completely toward the social institutions. If we look at their rates of hospitalization, number of beds, they are taking more and more elderly, forensic patients, and social cases, basically homeless people. So when we look at the percentage of people who really suffer from mental disorders, they are probably less than 25%. And every director in 5 psychiatric hospitals said that more than 30% or 40% of patients who are staying in the hospital can be released immediately, which means that the only reason why they are still in the hospital is because they do not have a place for living, and of course they don't have a proper support in the community. One of the interesting points that during one EU project, which was when Jan Pfeiffer was expert, together with Marko Đorić, they produced a feasibility study. It was nice to see a map of Serbia with Western Serbia, which is the region where there is no psychiatric hospital. And when you look at they probably have 11% of overall population of Serbia, but the people within hospital from that region are only 2%, which means where you don't have psychiatric hospitals, you don't have mentally ill in psychiatric hospitals. Okay. I will try to summarize this and be brief. Only 2 weeks ago, we had a 2-day conference in Belgrade with the help of Region Friuli Venezia Giulia, and together with Dr. Messina, Dr. Stana Stanic, and Roberto Sau. But we took that opportunity to get together both psychiatric institutions and social institutions, which I think was probably the first time where they get together and talk about the experiences. The problem is that they're completely different roles. They have a different language, they don't share the same ideology, and there will be a lot of problems to coordinate all these things. What we are trying to do now, after many years, is to shift their understanding from the treatment and institution and organization of services toward human rights and let's say treatment based on human rights, and also to understand the logic of CRPD. Because I believe that without that ideology, let's say, we cannot move any forward. We also the Ministry of Health managed to establish the working group on the deinstitutionalization, which started to work with the main task to rewrite a new mental health strategy. But we also forced to make the new task of writing a new legislation, which was still having many disadvantages at the same time. We are also looking forward to see a new project where the European Commission and Council of Europe together will follow up the implementation of this strategy for next 3 years. And me as a civil, let's say, consultant in a civil society organization, and my organization, as well as other NGOs and international organizations, we will just follow and see them, how they are overviewing them, what they are doing exactly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vlado. You were shorter of my message. Now we will use some minutes more because our colleagues from Hungary will start in their language, yes, and we will a short translation, and then the second presenter will finish in English. So we will give 5 minutes more for the translation. So from Hungary, I read because I don't want to make an error in reading your names. Sofia Zoni and Susanna Solar, is correct?
Thank you very much.
Tisztelettel köszöntök minden érdeklődőt. Szolár Zsuzsanna vagyok, a Szociális és Gyermekvédelmi Főigazgatóság egyik projektmenedzsere. Kollégáimmal jöttem a konferenciára, és köszönjük szépen a meghívást, hogy részt vehetünk, és bemutathatjuk azt, amit elértünk. Szeretném mondani önöknek, hogy a bábeli zűrzavarokán kolléganőnk fog majd tolmácsolni, és a kisfilmek fogják prezentálni az eredményeinket.
And now in English, good afternoon. My name is Susanna Solar, and I came with my Hungarian team, which I would like to present. Okay, I will present our team. Susanna is the project manager of a project which we'll present. Roland Gurban, he's the project office manager, and Marta Kis, professional leader, and Juhasni Takács Tima, our instructor. And me, my name is Sofia Szőnyi, and I am a coordinator for international relations. We came from the Directorate General for Social Affairs and Child Protection, which belongs to the Ministry of Human Resources. It's a background institution and is responsible for all this institution which we are talking about. And yeah, my colleague, I mentioned also that we will present more like movies and films than speech, because we consider it's very important that you see what we are talking about. Firstly, we will...
Persons with disabilities, like anybody else, have the right to live their own lives as independently as they would like to. By personalized support, persons with disabilities, persons with psychosocial disabilities, and also addict persons can live a life like anybody else. Therefore, the aim is to transform large institutional care into community living, into social inclusion. This process is called deinstitutionalization. Evidence shows that persons with disabilities taking part in the deinstitutionalization process have an improved quality of life, an increased independence, more useful work, to ability to establish good relationship with local citizens. Hereby, they are able to be included into the society and find their place in the local community. Széchenyi 2020, it was made on behalf of FSK Nonprofit Kft.
Okay. I guess it was not new for you, but it was some introduction for the institutionalization. It's a very new process in Hungary. It was in 2012, the first professional plan, which after many formations and changes launched 2013, the process in Berzente, by which 120 psychiatric patients could move from international care to supported housing. From EU sources, and it was finished in 2015. I mean, this 6 project. The supported housing is realized within the town and among the homes of the populations, inhabitants of the village, where the beneficiaries have become from institutional service users to residents of the town. In this process, we were assisted by Signor Roberto Mezzina, Pina Ridente, and Lorenzo Teresini, and thank you very much to your support. Thank you. We would like to show a short film about the first deinstitutionalization project, which was in Berzente, big measure. And the construction of the new houses.
Néhány gyenge szárcsapás, és ott volt egy érzés, hogy rajtam áll a változás, mert idegen élet, amit élek, ki ez a kétkedő lélek, miért van az, hogy elakad a szavam, tudom-e, hogy hova fut az utam, mert látod, az élet mégis megfordítható, ha várod, ha kéred, minden visszahozható. Amikor elveszel a vágyban, igenis menni kell bátran, nem hiába keresed a csodát, ma te vagy, akit megölel a világ. Egy új út, ez egy új út, ami az égig elvisz majd, ami minden örökké tart. Ez az a perc, amikor hinnem kell, ezen egy dallam ül a szívemben, ami most felszáll, és rám vár. Egy új út. Ez volt az álmom, érzem, nem kell semmi más. A napfény ma átfog, egy rég várt útnak indulás. Szívemben küzdelem nincs már, itt vagyok, felnőttem, nézz rám. Zene kell, vigyen el egy másik útra, hova beragyog a fény, a célba érek, te ott leszel, és megölelsz, ha félek. Egy új út. csodás új út, ami az égig elvisz majd, ami mindörökké tart. Egy új út, ami az égig elvisz majd, ami mindörökké tart. Ez az a perc, amikor hinnem kell, ezen egy dallamű a szívemben, ami most elszáll, és rám vár. Egy új út, ez az a perc, amikor hinnem kell, ezen egy dallam ül a szívemben, ami most elszáll, és rám vár. Egy új út.
Okay. So that's what we call supported housing. It's a service. Oh, sorry. It's a service where people using the service receive professional assistance after a complex need assessment to become self-helpers. Professional assistance may mean supervision, meals, care, skills development, counseling, pedagogical assistance, special education assistance, transport, household or household assistance. The assistant's top priority, the most important goal, is to reintegrate the users into society. With other words, the re-socialization. The model, which began in Peresense, it's in South Hungary, is still in process. The becoming independent of the users is slowly, but still in progress towards the target. We can see some testimonies of the users. Yeah.
Elmondhatom, hogy miután kikerültünk a kastélyból, apámmal vagyok egy szobába, és le a kalappal, olyan jól érzem magam. Nagyon-nagyon vártam, hogy végre együtt lehessek a párommal. Ő egy kicsit halássérült fiatal lány, de egy tündéri türemény.
They share
Széchenyi
the same house, so hol vagyunk? It's about the community.
Erősödtünk talán, nem? Azt hiszem, igen. És ami a legfontosabb, hogy szeretetbe erősödjön
More
egy ember.
important,
Szem előtt vagyunk, és
love grows
magunknak
together.
is. Minden nap át kell gondolni, hogy mit, hogyan, merre. Hát röviden csak annyival lehetne talán megfogalmazni, hogy emberibb,
The family atmosphere, more personal,
családias létszó.
human.
Mindenképp hálás vagyok.
She's very grateful.
Széchenyi 2020, it was made on behalf
Okay. I like being here.
Emlékszem, és kicsit féltem is, hogy majd milyen
She
lesz
was a
az
little
új
bit afraid.
lakhatás, de hála Istennek
But thanks
nagyon
God, it was a
csalódtam,
pleasant
mert
surprise.
amennyire féltem, most annyira
There was no
szeretek
need to be afraid.
Nagyon
Just
jó
really
kijövök
good.
mindenkivel. A legjobb
I really got
barátom,
on
a
with
szobatársam, őt már
everybody.
régebb óta ismerem. Ő az egyetlen, de a nagy barát.
She's my true friend.
Széchenyi 2020, it was
Még egyet? Okay. Nem tudom még.
Hosszú idő óta először
After a long
rászántam
time,
magam,
I've
hogy
committed myself to taking the
elmegyek
coach
én
all
is
by
egyedül
myself.
vissza. Előfordult már az elmúlt
It's
években,
been
hogy
3
valakivel
these
mentem, de
years
egyedül még
taken
nem.
the coach.
És amióta itt vagyok, azóta
I noticed that
azt
I'm
vettem
not so
észre, hogy
open
nem
to
olyan
going out.
bátran mozdulok ki. Most olyan helyzetbe kerültem,
But
hogy
I
el
ended
kellett
up in a
menni,
situation
és
where I had
akkor
no choice,
hát
had to go.
sikerült,
And I
és
made it.
megoldunk mindent.
And we can resolve
Széchenyi 2020,
everything.
it was made on behalf
Okay. Yeah, in In parallel to Berzente, the supported housing was modeled at 5 other locations. Such was Mérg, where people with disabilities could move from a large institution to the town. Oh, sorry. This is in Mérg, eastern Hungary. And the first round of the deinstitutionalization was realized also here and 5 other towns.
Intézményi férőhely kiváltási programjának első körében volt alkalmunk és lehetőségünk részt venni.
So that was among the pilot projects. Yeah, the pilot projects were in 6 places. Now is working in 29 places.
Ennek a projektnek a keretében 3 településen valósultak meg a beruházások. Felújításra került.
From the large old institution, a nursing care home in Mérg, were moved 102 persons with disabilities in 3 towns in and close to Mérg. One family house was renovated. An apartment center for 24 persons. The apartments have small kitchen and bathrooms, so for everyone, and 6 living units were built. And on the picture you can see the service center. There the people can go for lunch, and there are several services to get. Also development work, activities, and psychological service, and everything what they need. So this is one of the settlements. 66 persons will move here into 6 living units. From these 66 people, 45 are participating in the development work. It's very important because it has quite positive effects. According to their capacities, they can work, they can be active at a protected workplace. We are in the Fülpöstarócz. It's another settlement, and here we'll move 60 persons into 5 houses until December of this year. So we have more or less 7-8 months to finish it. The primary services are provided by an association, and we are really happy that the labor shortage and the lack of the workforce, we can compensate by the inclusion of the trained workforce of the other projects, the project of EFOP 112. It's a very important combination of the 2 projects. And I have to stop here because no. Only because we will talk about this other project. Yeah, the operation of supported housing requires more professionals than the large-scale institutions. Therefore, new professionals had to be recruited and trained to operate the small homes. When choosing professionals, the question arises, which people have not yet stuck to the old stereotypes, how care is preferred in their lives? Then it came the idea that unemployed, low-educated Roma people could be called and employed in the social sector. Yeah. After the training, because in the Roma families, the attention, the care, maintenance, obligation are all present. So Berzente has started modeling with 6 people, 3 of whom are still working there. The model has been further elaborated at places where new supported housing is being established. And the employment and employment-based training courses have been funded by EU funds for additional 958 Roma persons for 3 years, during 3 years. Some of those who are still employed in the model program are also mentors today. Oh, I have to close it and show you some pictures of them. She is, for example, a worker at a home, also she. Yeah. Okay, that's it's the same house in Berzenza. Okay. Yes, the two projects are a classic example of synergies where self-reliance, employment, and social inclusion appear together. I mean, the two projects, one project is the deinstitutionalization project, and the other project is about the training of Roma people, okay? We think that the Roma are a good example of the resumption of life, the meaning of the intended or planned life, and the pleasure of self-preservation, as well as their inspiration for their assisted housing with their caring, watchful presence and their work. I only wanted to show you the end of the video now, and that's the end of our.
Milyen változást hozott az életükbe az, hogy bekerültek a projektbe?
So here, and they are talking about the changes, which changes has brought this project in their life. And the man says it was very important because he can give his children everything, the possibilities, the opportunities, what they need. And they have now a good community. They are in a community. They are friends now, and it was a very, very good decision. How long has he been in the project? He says
És hogy érzi magát a
since
projektben?
this year. And how do you feel? I feel very good. The community is very good. All are very nice and kind. There is care and attention and friendship. The work is, I like the work, I can care about
Mikor
other
került a
people.
projektbe?
2017 április 3-án.
És hogy érzi magát a projektben?
Yeah, it's a big opportunity to work here. And yeah, in the beginning, I tried several works.
Si chiama la
and,
regione.
Hozott a
I like it
változást az
very much.
életébe ez, hogy bekerült a projektbe, és ha igen,
Which
akkor miket?
changes has it brought?
Nagyon örültem annak, hogy megvalósult ez a projekt, mert nagyon sok változást hozott az életembe.
It was a lot of
Úgy
change.
anyagilag, úgy lehet azt mondani, hogy
This is the end.
érzelmileg is,
This is
mert
the end.
az itteni
Okay.
ellátottaktól is úgymond
Okay. So that's about the testimonies of the Roma working in the deinstitutionalization. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we planned to make a break, but before this break we ask 10 minutes more because there is a very important intervention from a program between Slovenia and Italy. I asked the director of the hospital to, if you want to present. Okay, he jumped away. So if there is any question for
Posso dire, puoi anche parlare italiano, tanto ti stanno traducendo, pago io.
Beh, no,
Volevo dire, credo che insomma, uno degli scopi oggi, al di là dell'interesse sicuramente molto alto delle presentazioni dei paesi del centro-est Europa che abbiamo sentito qui, sia quello di arrivare ad una qualche idea comune, perché abbiamo chiamato questi incontri conversazioni, conversations, così era quello di arrivare ad una carta comune per i governi, una sorta di raccomandazione, un qualche cosa che unisse le esperienze così disparate e diverse. I don't know if you heard because you are okay. So I think it's very important to try to relaunch a common discourse, because I very much feel this fragmentation of experiences, this isolation of experience, even national isolation, and also to reflect better, because these models have all limitations. Nothing is perfect, including the Italian one, but there are advantages in having a common discussion, find the transversal point. We did in 2011 a document called the Trieste Declaration that is still available, and we will put again on the web. We'll send to all of you. But I think this is a very old document. It's very updated. It was based on the idea that what happened in Trieste or in Italy can be replicated as a model for industrialization in the world. Unfortunately not, and WHO completely disconfirmed, adopting a document developed by a very interesting group, starting from different points, called Innovation Industrialization, that was mentioned yesterday by Jose Caldas de Almeida. I don't know if Jose is here. For instance, WHO said you don't have to close institutions, you have to first to build up community services and then start to think about closing institutions. For us, this was a terrible mistake for the Italians, so we appealed against WHO, even if we are WHO Collaborating Center. We don't adhere to this point of view, but this is a sensitive point. For instance, for countries which don't have a strong welfare or funds to set up new services in the community, the only way is to do this reconversion of the money spent in institutions. So I think there are several points that we can discuss, including the role of NGOs. And I don't know, it's not the real format, but I think that we should try to communicate in the next future about this idea of creating a common charter on this point. Otherwise, the destiny is that every country is stressing what is natural, the local conditions, the national conditions, but the main ideas can be stripped away. In a way, we can lose them. But there are common points. So I think we have to work on that. So I think I'm very interested if we can just start with some few indications from the audience about this point. So, for instance, is it correct to say that move from a bigger social care home like Belzence to small houses in one settlement is a correct choice? Because there are good and bad points. For instance, to be honest, or is it correct to think that you can only have digitalization in social care and then leave the psychiatric power in the hospitals is good, and as another good policy? Is it nice to have the Roma providing care, but someone can say, well, that's sort of racist, I don't know. Well, we can discuss in a positive way, but it's a selection of race from another point of view. So, well, I think there are several points to discuss, and we are also going on and listening to some examples from other points in the world. But it's a very serious point. So everybody has something nice to show or something terrible to show, like Ladislav said before, but we should try to find common points. Sorry to say that. I don't know if someone would say something.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Thank you very much, Sofia and Susanna, for coming here and referring us this experience. I believe very much that every nation, every yes, every country has to do his own experience. What I wanted to point out about what I know of Hungarian institutionalization is that, first of all, the huge central historical mental hospital of Budapest has been closed many years ago. This is an important point, really relating also to what said Roberto Medina. But as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong, you can explain to everybody how it is. Instead of closing, deinstitutionalizing at the beginning the central mental hospital, there have been settled several peripheral alternatives like St. Gotthard, for instance, and so on and so forth. But these experiences that you described are totally different. And so I'm relating this, okay, we don't want to speak about politics here today. But anyway, in Europe, in Italy, we have the problem of your prime minister, that I don't quote here in this moment, and we have now a prime minister in Italy who is friendly with him. But nevertheless, the institutionalization in Hungary, and it's a point that it's important that also in Hungary it's going ahead, the institutionalization in Hungary is going ahead as well. So, in Middle Europe, there is something happening which is very important for us and for Trieste. I don't quote the Czech Republic, which I heard that also very interesting things are happening. So thank you very much for coming here and witnessing your activity. Thanks a lot.
No other questions, or from the audience, or... Fermiamo. Allora, c'è un intervento?
Yes, 10 minutes for...
and then 10 minutes for breaking, and then we start again because we have still 4 very important presentations.
Okay, sorry for my English. I am Marco Visintin. I work in the mental health center in Gorizia, and with Bogdan Tushar, is the general director of Psychiatric Hospital of Idria. We want to describe you a specific project that is called Mental Health Project Inject-Go. Is an organization that have found from Interreg Italia-Slovenia 2014-2020. And now I want to speak to you about the general framework of this organization. The Europe Group of Territorial Cooperation, in English EGT, European Grouping of Territorial Cooperation, is a tool designed to overcome the difficulties in implementing and managing cross-border cooperation projects due to different laws and procedures, and to facilitate the exercise of tasks common. The general objective established in a small area that means the municipality of Gorizia, Nova Gorica, and Szentpéter. And they have about 70,000 inhabitants. And this territorial cooperation extended to all activities related to the regional development of the area. In this big project, there were a part for tourist project funded about with 5 million euros, and a health project. In the health project there is a mental health project and autism project and other 2. The aims of the general aims of the mental health project is to implement synergies between the 2 systems against institutionalization and social exclusion and chronicization. reinforcement of every recovery-oriented interventions, training of the cross-border equipe, and in this phase we ask the help of WHO Collaborating Center here in Trieste with Dr. Mezzina, and to implement the health budget for Slovenian patients in collaboration with the Mental Health Center of Gorizia, to manage and share activities of the day center in Gorizia, creation of cohabitation group in Slovenian territory in co-management with NGO, and creation of self-mutual cross-border and aid and association. This project is just started last year, so we hope to come back here with more results. And now Dr. Bogdan speak about in specific about the mental health project. Thank you.
Okay, Marco, thank you for the possibility to speak here. I promise I will be very brief. So the project is really a good opportunity to connect two different systems, mental health systems, the Italian community-based system and the Slovene system, which is predominantly still relies mainly on institutional forms of assistance. So the goal, of course, is to identify points of care that can unite both systems despite their differences, but above all, to achieve exchange experience between Italian and Slovene mental health experts and good practice of our work in the community. So the creation of a joint multidisciplinary team of Slovenian and Italian experts is an important issue of the project to support young people with mental disorders to maintain in a stable condition without the need for hospitalization, because the closest psychiatric hospital is 60 kilometers away, of course, and to help them to return successfully to the home or to stay in the home environment after the completion of treatment. So the joint team will be therefore responsible for resolving the acute situation by admitting to Centro Salute Mentale in Gorizia or managing the crisis in the home environment, and of course for the preparing a personalized rehabilitation project such as healthcare budget we know in Italy for every individual involved in the project. A joint multidisciplinary team will operate with accordance to a protocol that would connect different ways and methods dealing or working with patients in the community in Italy and Slovenia. So what the joint team will try to achieve is an integrated social and health care on both sides, in Italy and Slovenia. So what is important? Early diagnosis. The joint team would initially focus on helping people, young people between ages of 18 and 35, with permanent residence in local area for which a serious mental illness would be detected for the first time. The second most important issue is to join team action in crisis. So the joint team will set up a protocol to properly address crisis, which will allow the use of regional reception into the center in Gorica, or community work at home as an alternative to institutional care. The opportunity we see within the project is also to improve the possibilities for more effective integration of people with mental health programs into the process of work rehabilitation. So the role of joint team is the project to control the process of patients' reintegration in appropriate social and labor activities on both sides, Slovenia and Italy. So therefore, within the project, an investment is planned for reorganization of the current Center for Health Care in Nova Gorica for the implementation of different activities and cooperation with non-governmental and private organizations in order to create a better employment opportunities and social reintegration. For the end, the Salute Zdravje project represents really an important opportunity to tackle the issues of combining health and social services across all 3 border municipalities in order to improve the use of local health services for the benefit of young patients. Thank you for now.
So, I'm sorry because I have to correct myself. We have no time for the break. So we have to change. I ask the next people who has to speak. Michela is here. I invite Sashi. Sashi, please come with us. Janice Cooper from Liberia and Azad Ramlawi. I have here. Please join us. We are so pressed. Va bene, allora diamo subito la parola a Michela Vogrig, che ci parlerà del ruolo della cooperazione sociale, facendo anche un po' da ponte tra gli interventi che abbiamo appena sentito e che erano centrati sull'Europa, in particolare sull'Europa dell'Est, e gli amici che parleranno dopo, che vengono da paesi più lontani. Michela, tiriamo le orecchie al dottor Torresini che sta scappando. Va bene, ma lo perdoniamo perché gli vogliamo bene. Bene.
Okay. Buongiorno a tutti, io mi scuso ma parlerò in italiano, ne approfitto della traduzione, per cui insomma. Allora, mi è stato chiesto un po' di cogliere anche alcune riflessioni e collegare quello che ho sentito prima, anche a partire dalle sollecitazioni che prima ci faceva Roberto rispetto all'esigenza di definire anche delle raccomandazioni, degli elementi comuni per sviluppare le azioni di cooperazione allo sviluppo, in questo caso sia da un punto di vista istituzionale, sia, come nel nostro caso, da un punto di vista delle cooperative sociali che io rappresento. Il consorzio che io rappresento appunto è un consorzio che nasce, è un consorzio della regione Friuli Venezia Giulia, che aggrega ad oggi 18 cooperative della regione, di cui tutte regionali tranne una del Veneto, e che in realtà aggrega tra queste cooperative alcune delle realtà più significative di quel modello, chiamiamolo così, di cooperazione basagliana. In particolare, lo dico con un certo orgoglio, una delle cooperative sociali del mio consorzio è appunto la cooperativa CLU, nata appunto come prima cooperativa italiana a partire da quel movimento. Allora, una considerazione. Allora, noi come cooperative, come consorzio, ormai da più di 10 anni lavoriamo nell'ambito della cooperazione allo sviluppo. Perché? Qual è la motivazione che ci ha spinto a farlo fondamentalmente? Perché credo che la prima cosa che mi interessi rappresentare le motivazioni per cui abbiamo deciso di fare questa cosa. La principale motivazione, secondo me, è quella di agire coerentemente con quella che è la nostra mission. Noi nasciamo con una finalità legata a un interesse generale, un interesse della collettività. Non siamo imprese, basta, siamo una forma di impresa sociale con un modello democratico, e quindi è una cosa ovvia e banale, ma mi interessa comunque ribadirla. Un altro aspetto è il fatto che, secondo me, è importante che le cooperative sociali perseguano un concetto di mutualità. La mutualità è alla base del nostro modello, però la mutualità deve essere anche una mutualità esterna, una mutualità che ci consente di scambiare, crescere, essere generativi, non solo all'interno della comunità in cui noi nasciamo, ma anche in rapporto con altri territori, altri luoghi e per sostenere altri processi analoghi ai nostri, in cui noi possiamo in qualche modo metterci a disposizione. In questi anni abbiamo lavorato in diversi luoghi, a partire da queste premesse, con un approccio che è sempre stato un approccio bottom-up, perché anche riprendendo quella che è stata la storia della cooperazione sociale in Italia, in realtà prima è nata la cooperazione sociale e poi è venuta la norma. Prima si è disegnato un processo e poi la norma l'ha fotografato, quindi in realtà la sperimentazione, l'avvio di quel percorso è nato da persone che credevano in quel caso nell'importanza di riconoscere, in quel caso come nel caso della CLU, diritti alle persone che avevano un problema di salute mentale. Partiva tra l'altro da piccole cose, dalla richiesta di mettere i guanti, di chiedere dei guanti per consentire a queste persone che lavoravano proprio nel parco di San Giovanni di proteggersi dal rischio di ferirsi, di ammalarsi nel fare un lavoro in cui in realtà non era un lavoro perché non era retribuito. Quindi sono piccole cose che sono state fondamentali per quello poi che è stato realizzato successivamente. Attualmente noi lavoriamo in vari progetti in collaborazione nella quasi totalità col Dipartimento di Trieste, devo dire, questo mi fa molto piacere, e in una logica appunto bottom up, lavorando e da un lato sostenendo delle alleanze con dei partner istituzionali come il Dipartimento di Trieste, che ovviamente porta e rappresenta quell'approccio comunitario di cui tanto si è parlato in queste giornate, ma dall'altro anche facendo un lavoro dal basso che consente a quei soggetti della comunità, della collettività, le ONG, le imprese sociali, tutti quei soggetti che di fatto vengono fuori dalla comunità e hanno voglia di avviare questi processi, che di solito non interessano solo la salute mentale. Quando si parla di diritti delle persone si parla di diritti di qualsiasi persona sia ai margini. Quindi il lavoro che abbiamo fatto in questi anni è stato quello, metterci a disposizione di quei soggetti, fondamentalmente anche della società civile, perché spesso le normative non prevedono le cooperative sociali, e devo dire, a me non interessa neanche che le prevedano, l'importante è il processo, non il soggetto giuridico che sviluppa un determinato percorso. Se i principi sono democratici, se al centro ci sono le persone, il rispetto delle persone, noi siamo disponibili a sostenere questi processi. Vi faccio un esempio. Tra i percorsi che noi stiamo seguendo in questo periodo, in questi anni c'è per esempio, prima si è parlato della Serbia, ormai siamo quasi 10 anni che noi stiamo lavorando con un gruppo serbo, la Caritas di Šabac, che ha avviato un percorso che a me piace raccontarlo perché effettivamente rappresenta quello che vi dicevo. Hanno iniziato in forma volontaria a sostenere un'assistenza domiciliare a titolo gratuito sul territorio, con l'obiettivo di prevenire fondamentalmente l'istituzionalizzazione di persone con problemi di salute mentale, e progressivamente sono arrivati a definire dei servizi che sono stati attivati dal basso, quindi da questa associazione che progressivamente è diventata, non era una cooperativa, diciamo un'impresa sociale, perché in realtà in Serbia c'è una normativa diversa dalla nostra, che ad oggi, che in un percorso di 10 anni è riuscita senza nessuna agevolazione decontribuzione come hanno le cooperative, senza nessun particolare aiuto, ad avviare un'assistenza domiciliare, un centro diurno che in realtà è un centro di aggregazione. Il centro diurno non ci piace, invece il centro di aggregazione è un modello che ci piace molto di più, che fornisce dei servizi a persone con problemi di salute mentale su un territorio, un bacino di circa 400.000 persone, perché Šabac ha quel bacino di abitanti. E questo lunedì 18, e questa settimana, sto perdendo colpi sulle date, ero in un'altra città della Serbia, Bogati, cioè di inaugurare un analogo luogo di questo tipo che è stato avviato a partire da quel modello, con una realtà che dal basso, a fronte di un'alleanza che ho costruito piano piano con la municipalità, è riuscita di fatto a creare una struttura che impiega 60 operatori e ha creato 3 lavanderie industriali che hanno ben il 70-80% di inserimenti lavorativi, senza avere nessuna agevolazione fiscale di nessuna natura. E questo per dirvi che ci sono delle realtà di questo tipo e secondo me il ruolo che noi come cooperazione sociale possiamo avere è quello di aiutarle a crescere e a stare sulle loro gambe, ovviamente nella consapevolezza che la posizione che noi dobbiamo assumere non è una posizione di insegnare niente, perché noi non andiamo a insegnare nulla, noi ci mettiamo a disposizione, ognuno ha la sua storia e il suo percorso, al suo contesto. E credo che un elemento fondamentale di fare cooperazione dal nostro punto di vista debba essere quello di entrare in punta di piedi, rispettare il contesto, preservando quei principi che vi ponevo prima, che sono il nostro DNA, però consentendo e favorendo lo sviluppo di un processo che ovviamente deve essere un processo assolutamente tarato e centrato sulla realtà in cui nasce, quindi con delle caratteristiche in cui non ci possono fare forzature, bisogna ovviamente rispettare il contesto in cui si va a lavorare. Quindi al momento quello che mi interessava sottolineare anche rispetto agli interventi che sono stati fatti prima è che sicuramente un aspetto che rilevo sempre più, ma credo anche molti miei colleghi che lavorano con me sulla cooperazione allo sviluppo, e lo diceva prima anche Roberto, è questa elevata frammentazione. Spesso non c'è una rete sufficiente fra quei soggetti che condividono per esempio l'esigenza di sostenere questo tipo di esperienze e trovare un'adeguata capacità di collegarle, quindi cogliendo quello che tu sollecitavi prima, sicuramente oltre a superare la frammentazione, un luogo come questo che di fatto cerca di connettere e di rafforzare, creare una rete fra soggetti che hanno obiettivi comuni diventa una cosa importantissima. Spesso l'abbiamo scoperto sul campo, penso alla Serbia già citata, abbiamo scoperto che soggetti che in realtà vivono vicinissimi non si conoscono l'uno con l'altro, mentre il fatto di raccordarli e metterli insieme determina una forza e una capacità di impatto veramente significativa, sia a livello istituzionale che a livello di capacità di trasformare realmente un contesto. Quindi, come tempi? 5 minuti, benissimo. Quindi, ecco, un altro aspetto che mi interessava riprendere rispetto alla richiesta che faceva Roberto era anche questo. Oltre al fare i progetti bisogna investire, nel senso che a mio avviso i progetti devono essere progetti che non solo consentono un intervento a spot, ma se non prevedono anche un elemento di continuità nel tempo, anche un investimento, sono progetti in cui di solito spesso si esauriscono con un contributo o un finanziamento che poi alla fine non porta a niente. Questo è un aspetto spesso sottovalutato, ma io credo che la filosofia della cooperazione allo sviluppo, che giustamente ti pone già in un presupposto di scambio a maggior favore del paese su cui si va a avviare questo percorso, al paese ovviamente beneficiario della cooperazione, non può dimenticare questo aspetto fondamentale. L'esigenza di poter prevedere, anche al di là del contributo e del finanziamento, e questo secondo me è importante, la possibilità di dare continuità ai percorsi che si avviano. Quindi il fatto di mantenere questo filo nel tempo, per quello che ho potuto vedere io, spesso è l'elemento che fa la differenza su percorsi che hanno un esito positivo o comunque la possibilità di impattare in modo diverso. Io ho visto che percorsi che noi seguiamo anche al di là dei progetti, in un rapporto amicale quasi ormai con alcune persone che vanno avanti da più anni, nel tempo hanno visto degli esiti assolutamente diversi da quelli che si realizzavano in 3-4 anni e che poi non ci si vedeva più e tutto era finito. Ecco, lo dico, sembra una cosa ovvia, però già averlo in testa quando si fanno i progetti diventa assolutamente, secondo me, fondamentale. Beh, allora, visto che ho solo 5 minuti, 3 minuti, concludo veramente. Allora, tornando a quelle che erano le premesse, concludo con questo. Un'altra cosa che spesso ci viene rimandata, e credo che specialmente il gruppo triestino con cui lavoro abitualmente, è una cosa che sente spesso è: ma voi avevate un contesto diverso, facilitante, in cui queste cose erano possibili, mentre in questi momenti storici in altri paesi non si riesce a fare niente. Faccio l'esempio, vi cito scambio recente con l'Argentina, con cui abbiamo un altro progetto di cooperazione, in cui la rappresentazione anche sociopolitica che ci viene fatta è di questo tipo. Allora, io credo, e per quello anche vi ho citato l'esempio della Serbia, che si debba partire da un altro presupposto. Primo, a mio avviso, non è necessaria una legge per fare le cose. La dimostrazione di quello che è successo a Trieste, ma è successo anche in altri luoghi, è che le leggi ratificano qualcosa che deve partire, deve essere avviato, bisogna avere il coraggio di fare delle scelte, di sperimentare e anche di rischiare a volte, perché penso che la storia di Trieste lo insegni, che sono stati presi molti rischi da chi ha avviato quel percorso, e quindi anche in contesti dove non ci sono delle precondizioni di favore per avviare dei processi di cambiamento, delle cose si possono fare. Io credo profondamente questo, e quello che ho visto finora è che se c'è questo presupposto, questa convinzione nelle persone, si possono fare veramente grandi cose, anche a partire da piccoli passi. Grazie.
Grazie Michela, anche per la puntualità, anche se ci hai spaventato. No, scherzo. Okay. The next speaker will be a bit European and a bit out of Europe. It's our friend Sashi, who represents the UK and India, and so he will open our spaces. You.
First of all, I do not represent UK. I do not claim to represent UK or India. It is such an awesome responsibility to represent the United Kingdom. I happen to be working in the United Kingdom, and I'm particularly interested in the area of what's come to be known as global mental health, and I want to share a few thoughts about some of the difficulties or challenges associated with the global mental health. This is an emerging discipline, an important discipline within mental health. It's something that has very noble aspirations. It is concerned, as some of the leading proponents of global mental health argue, about improving mental health services, mental health in general, across the world, and make the experience of mental health care positive and rewarding across the world. One of the key concerns of global mental health is what's come to be known as the treatment gap. This is a gap that exists between mental health problems and the access to services. It is estimated that in high-income countries, such as Italy, but that is an example of Italy, but generally in high-income countries, this gap between need and access to treatment is quite significant, which is, thank you, which is around 35 to 50%, which is quite significant. That's nearly 1/3 or over 1/3 of people with mental health problems do not come into contact with mental health services or receive treatment. In low and middle income countries, the gap is much greater. It's only about 1 in 6 of people who experience significant mental health difficulties that come into contact with appropriate mental health care. Global mental health and the World Health Organization, in its embrace of this new discipline is correctly concerned about this treatment gap. Leaving aside the particular problem about treatment gap in high-income countries, which I believe, by the way, is a major concern, especially in one of the richest countries in the world, which is the United States, where the treatment gap is one of the highest reported in high-income countries. In fact, to such an extent, many people compare the current situation in the United States about lack of access to appropriate mental health facilities to what is happening in very poor countries. It is an irony that the biggest mental health institution in the United States is a Los Angeles County jail, where people with severe mental health problems in one of the richest countries in the world continue to subsist without any access to any mental health treatment. But the treatment gap in poorer countries is the focus of global mental health. And along with this treatment gap, one can understand it that there is a gap in terms of the resources available. This is a comparison between England and India. England, a much richer country, India in the low middle income country bracket. I can see it. As you can see, in India, there is a fraction of the amount of money available in England for mental health expenditure. It is less than 1% of the healthcare spending that is devoted to mental health, while in richer countries, England is an example, it is in the region of 9 to 11%. So the disparity is very striking. So if there is such a gap between the resources available between the countries, it is not surprising that there is a gap in terms of the ability of mental health services to respond to mental health needs. Similarly, in terms of the number of professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, nurses, etc., available in these countries, huge disparity. However, the attempt to address the treatment gap is based on an understanding of the resources and the needs across the world. But if you look at this particular picture, this diagram, you can see that actually shows where the data is coming from. The vast majority of countries, we have no data or very little data in relation to either mental health needs or the availability of mental health resources. That is for common mental health problems. If you look at people with severe mental health difficulties, what we know, in other words, the basis of global mental health is that relies on very limited data from very few countries. One will have to make the assumption that this data is representative, and there are particular problems in coming to that understanding. And I would say this is one of the key weaknesses of what we called global mental health, because the thinking in global mental health is not entirely global. Therefore, I argue that thinking in global mental health comes from places where there is data, relating to places where there are resources, places where psychiatry is well established, i.e. high-income countries. The second assumption is, in terms of global mental health, that everybody, everywhere in the world, experience mental health difficulties in much the same way as we do. When I say we, in high-income countries. This is a very important book written by an American journalist who explored this issue, in fact, arguing that the expression or experience of mental health difficulties vary substantially across the globe. The WHO attempts to address this treatment gap through scaling up services, i.e., building up services in countries where there are no services, assumption that will address the treatment gap. Provide comprehensive integrated services elsewhere, along with a number of other tasks. But there are some difficulties with this approach, and I am inviting some kind of engagement with some critical aspects of this. Global mental health is not a straightforward, non-problematic concern. Along with global mental health will come what one author interestingly described as global side effects. First is the legacy of European psychiatry in poorer countries until now. If you look at the legacy of Western psychiatry, where over the years services have been scaled up, what we have ended up in countries, poorer countries, like in India, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, countries where I have direct experience, is asylum psychiatry. And it is a form of toxic psychiatry that emphasizes the need for coercion. The 150 years of global psychiatry until now has resulted in recreating the mistakes which high-income countries are now trying to correct. There is a risk of a repetition of the same story with the current approaches within global mental health. Secondly, and this is a point that Roberto Messina referred to earlier today, which is the assumption that one size will fit everybody. And primarily in terms of institutional psychiatry, primarily in terms of hospital-based, clinic-based psychiatry, does it fit in a country that is substantially different from Italy, from the United States, from England? I'm not sure. Also, this is a more uncomfortable point for us, deinstitutionalization. It has a European history, it has a European context, and it is built on European experiences. In countries where mental health resources are confined to exclusively to hospitals, with nothing outside the hospital in terms of social services, social resources through governmental agencies, is deinstitutionalization the way we have pursued it the appropriate model? But I will end by reminding ourselves there are some universal themes that we cannot depart from. It is not about asylum psychiatry. It's not about the biomedical model. Those are not universal. It's not about concepts of schizophrenia or depression. Those are not universal. It's not about the effectiveness of antidepressants. That is not universal. What are universal are human rights and fundamental freedoms. Any mental health service anywhere in the world, poor country, rich country, that must be at the center of organizing mental health services. And secondly, I would say a universal theme is replace psychiatric hospital, by which I mean institutional framework of psychiatry, with alternatives to it. So if there is one lesson that we can bring to global mental health, it is not about scaling up services so that services in Ghana or India begin to look like the impoverished services in this country. I mean, not in Italy, but in the United Kingdom or United States. But there are different kind of service. But these ideas, these themes will have to be recreated everywhere we are concerned about mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Sashi, for your presentation. I was concerned to stop so a good presentation, and you stopped before. So again, twice, thank you. Now I give the chair to our colleague from Liberia, Janice Cooper. Maybe you prefer to come here for, you don't have, okay, thank you. Okay, the same also for you, 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. A special thanks to Dr. Messina for inviting us. It's a privilege to be here. And I want to congratulate you on 40 years of Law 180. And it's a law that all my students learn about. And Basaglia is a name that they know well. And they know it because of people like Gian Piero Grifo and our friends from IFO who have been working with us in Liberia for the last 10 years, working to make sure that our system of care does not repeat the mistakes of the hard-learned lessons of some of the West. So I've been asked to talk about global mental health, and I'll talk first a little bit about the project that we have been working on for the last almost 10 years now, and where we only had one psychiatrist when the Carter Center went in to do mental health in Liberia. And so we decided that what we wanted to do was to use the mid-level healthcare workers, imbue them with the skills that they needed to be able to provide mental health services. We now have 3 psychiatrists, but the bulk of the work for mental health service delivery at the community level and in the clinic level falls to mid-level providers who are nurses and physician assistants, and they have a 6-month post-basic training in mental health. And at this point, many years of experience as well. We also try to do at least 8 in-services a year, and they all learn about the Quality Rights Toolkit, and in fact, we've just got through doing a quality rights assessment that we presented earlier at the conference. The other part of our work that we're very proud of is fostering consumer or user organizations. And so we have a national organization that's called Cultivation for Users' Hope. We support them, we incubate them, we help them with ways to make sure that mental health service users are not dependent on the system, but are actually gaining independence. And then closely aligned with that is trying to create our own panel of research that emanates in Liberia by Liberians. And of course, we work with partners across the world, but our focus is to make sure that research that's generated in our setting benefits the people who live in our setting. So then let me just turn my focus a little bit to the global mental health and what we've been involved in there. So the biggest thing coming down the line is a new Lancet series, which we hope will generate new interest in mental health and create the kind of activity and burgeoning and cultivation of service supports as well as empowerment for users that the prior Lancet series does. And so October 2018, we expect during World Mental Health Day in London, there'll be a big launch for global mental health and really focusing on some of the core elements. And again, the entire frame is related to the human rights frame. So economic empowerment, wellness, full participation, leadership by service users in service delivery and service management, a system that's accountable. A lot of discussion will be around accountability, and a global movement that represents systems that hold all governments accountable. I think one of the things that we in lower middle income countries suffered from is that we're not able to hold our governments accountable, not necessarily in a confrontational way, but making sure that they understand that persons with mental health conditions and their families are entitled to the same rights and responsibilities as others. I think the other thing to watch for is some discussion about how we finance a global mental health program and how we push for accountability and parity. How we make sure that someone with a mental health condition, or both a mental health condition and a physical condition, can expect to get the same level of excellence for both conditions. Finally, I just want to talk a little bit about what parity and accountability is going to mean in our setting. And in Liberia, what we're looking for is our teachers who are able to teach all children, irrespective of whether they have a social, emotional, behavioral disorder, or they are children of parents that have a mental health disorder, that they will have the skills and knowledge to support those children to succeed and reach their full potential. I think what it means is for healthcare workers that can adhere to both addressing mental health and physical health, that we have social insurance and supportive opportunities for persons with mental health conditions, and that politicians, lawmakers, and governments realize that they need to work for all of us, not for one segment of the community. And finally, and this is where I think you all also have a part to play as coming from more high-income countries, is that donors and governments must embed the need for comprehensive mental health services in all that they do. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you for, in so a short time, you put so many important things. It's a wonderful example. Now the conclusion will be from Dr. Adam Ramlawi, coming from a country that personally for me is very important in my history, Palestine.
Okay, before starting, allow me first to thank Dr. Roberto Messina and all the team, the staff, because they show us and we learn from them how they are dedicated, how they are committed, how they are eager to teach and to learn. They are teaching us and learning from us, exchanging their experience. They have no interest, the only interest they have is to transmit and transfer the Basalian model to all the world in order to alleviate their suffering of the patient and the people. At the same time, allow me again to thank all of them for this excellent organization of this conference. From technical, administrative point of view, thanks for you, for your staff, for the administrators, for secretary, for everyone. And I ask you to give them your hands. Thank you. Now, starting with my presentation, I think I have to give different one. As I am a Deputy Minister of Health, I want to give my presentation from decision and policymaker point of view, as well as a country suffering from conflict, where we have more need of the international support, not only for health services, but only for occupation, because following occupation and political conflict, we have more and more psychological and psychosocial problem. Starting by this first slide, which is Jerusalem, the lovely city for everyone in the world, Muslims, Christians, Jewish. This is the Holy Land where has to live in peace, not in a conflict. And if we succeed one day to have a peace in our area, in our land, in Holy Land, believe me, many, many problems, financial and psychological, will be solved, and all the area will benefit from that. And for this reason, we have really to take into consideration this concept, because health and politics could not be separated. Health affected by politics, and politics affected negatively health. And here why we have also to be ambassadors for our politicians in order to negotiate also for peace. And here as a policymaker, I want to say that before having any problem or organizing any problem, we have to secure the political commitment. political commitment, even from the high policymaker, from the president, from the prime minister, from the government. And accordingly, the Minister of Health has to transmit this commitment to his staff in the ministry and also for other health providers in the country. And only by this we can succeed to speak really about successful implementation of any problem, including any program, including mental health. And by mental health, I can assure you that with all our problems, conflicts, emergency situation, we succeeded to have special laws for mental health services signed by President only 1 year ago. And this is really the commitment that we aim in order to succeed in our planning. The second important one is to speak about institutionalization, reforming. Reforming means directorate, department, units, sections, and only they have not to be vertical. They have to be horizontal. They have to be integrated. They have to work as a teamwork, regardless primary, secondary, tertiary. And this is really the spirit of the integration that we are speaking since 2 days, integration of community mental health, but integration should involve everyone, Ministry of Health and other ministries, Ministry of Health and other institutions, and also in the same time, different departments within the same ministry. The third one is to focus more on prevention than curative, because we strongly believe that prevention is easier, it's cheaper, and giving better results. And also when we are speaking about prevention, I start with politics, and avoiding conflicts, you can live better. And this is now the definition that yesterday I mentioned in my opening remarks. Health is not only absence of disease. Health is physical, mental, spiritual, psychological, social, and environmental. And believe me, according to WHO, environment and social are responsible of 60% of the health. Means that we can offer only 40% as medical team and medical staff. And here why is important to speak about multi-system approach. Here why we have to involve other ministries and other institutions really to fulfill our needs and our objectives. The last one, integration. And already I mentioned something about integration, but within the integration, we can promote the community participation. No integration, no success if the community are not involved. The community has to be involved. And the model of also mental health, when we saw disabled people participated, and when we saw also mental people distributed with the cooperative, this is the model of Trieste. This is really the community participation. And we never succeed if the community is not involved or not involved. This is why we have to increase the knowledge of the community, awareness of the community, and also awareness of the medical staff as well as policymaker. And also we have to respond upon community needs. The PEDS patients that we saw in the different presentations, they have certain needs. And we have as a government to respond upon their needs and to fulfill also their requirement. And here again, I have to focus about social determinants of health, where many others, they have to take also their role. Our colleague from Iberia spoke about schools. Without doubt, Minister of Education is so responsible when we are speaking about more than 40 to 50% of the population are under 18 years, especially in the low and mid-income countries. And never we can do something without involving schools and without involving others. Now, the objectives of the ministry is to provide essential health services for everyone in the community with high standard. And these services, again, should be comprehensive, integrated, completed, appropriate for wellness and well-being. And when we are speaking about well-being, means really we can achieve our objectives, because well-being, people has to live better, not only absence of disease. And again, here, the mission of our ministry could be summarized in 3 words: promotion, sustainability, and improvement. We have to promote for these programs. We have to promote for these new initiatives, but we have to sustain what we achieved up to this moment in order to improve our health services. And unfortunately, as a Palestinian living in conflict area, we have a lot of challenges. The main one is the political one. And here I can show you only this map. Palestine is divided into parts, two parts. This is the West Bank, and this is Gaza, in between Israel. I don't believe that any country in the world, if you can give me one word, okay, I will try my best. Okay, no country in the world has no continuity. The area are divided between Israel, and if you want to go from Gaza to West Bank, you have to ask a permit, a special permit from Israeli side, or vice versa, and not always are allowed. 90% are not allowed and neglected. And in the same way, in also West Bank, we have differentiation or separation between different districts by checkpoints, by the separation wall, by different settlements disseminated here and there. And this, without doubt, will cause a lot of problem in order to control health services. Now, this is the wall. Seeing that I have no time, I have to go more quickly. And this is some area called Kalkidia. If to move from one place to another needs 5 minutes, but within the wall, you have to have at least 2 hours. And this is when we are speaking about human rights. You have to speak about 3 things: availability of services, acceptability of services, and access of services. Now, when we are speaking about 2 hours, means the access is not ensured 100%, especially when you have checkpoints. Unfortunately, this is again politics. Now, the second one is the budget, fund. No project could be done without fund. And unfortunately, since that we are living in conflict area, we are rely upon donation, and donation always are under the condition of politics. The information system within the government, we succeeded to have networking within hospitals and primary care, but up to this moment within private sector, within UNRWA services, UNRWA may be the only country that you have UN presenting services, offering services in Palestine, because we have refugees camps, and refugees by UN mandate in 48, they have to provide health services for those living in camp, and this is belonging to UN, not to the government. And again, there are universal health coverage that already mentioned by many others. We have to speak about universal health coverage, but universal health coverage also, they have the problem of politics, because when we are speaking about East Jerusalem and land, the same legislation, I mentioned already that some legislation has been done recently, but there is a cross-cutting legislation, and within our situation, the parliament is not functioning, and usually you need to have bylaws or laws, sometimes more time, the continuous education. But again, the problem that we are sharing all the world, the globalization. Now, all countries shifted from infectious disease to non-infectious disease, chronic disease. And when we are speaking about chronic disease, we have to speak about mental health services. And unfortunately, by UN agencies, WHO, UNICEF, did certain survey in our country for school children, showed that almost we have more than 800,000 children need psychosocial intervention. Because these people, these children living in Gaza, they have 10 or 12 years, already they were witnessing 3 wars, and all of them, they are suffering from loss of some of their friends or some of their families or some of their parents, and unfortunately, here why we are speaking sometimes about the conflict and how can affect negatively or positively the children. This is something that already all the world, and this is something that already mentioned this morning, but again, we have to say something about public health, seeing that I am a policymaker, and for me, when I have to take a decision, we have to study the cost effectiveness, and usually we can live more than 30 years, usually. Only 5 years could be related to medication and medical intervention, and 25 years only by public health. And by public health is not the responsibility of the Ministry of Health, it's the responsibility of all of us. Everyone is responsible when we are speaking about mental health. And this is the idea of the cooperation, the cooperative that here in Trieste is really a public health, because everyone has to feel responsible and everyone has to do his duty. And this is the public health. The medical model is one. The public is all the community. And this is why we are speaking about community. And this is the cross-cutting between when we are speaking about social determinants, that everything here when we are speaking about mental health, it's matching with everything. And here why the multidisciplinary is very important. Here why cooperation, coordination is very important, because no one can live alone, everyone in need for others. And here why 60% of health is depending on other entities and other institutions. Unfortunately, because I know that I don't know if I can go on or not. Okay, I can please stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel bad all the day, but now more than before with the colleague, because, as I said, thank you, Dr. Amraouli, thank you, Sashi, thank you, Janis. I don't know if there is anybody who wants to put any question for this very important point of our day.
Now, I wish to introduce an important information. In the sense, I am very happy that in the discussion put the attention to the relationship with the Convention of the Right of Persons with Disability, international engagement, and activity on psychiatry. I think maybe that is one issue very important, because are related for the majority of persons with disability in the world, the 80% living there. For that, in Italy, in the 2011, born the Italian Network on Disability and Development. It's a network that respecting the convention in all activity, but include 2 organizations of persons with disability and 2 organizations that make activity in the field of the cooperation. This means that our job is exactly direct to provide projects for this country based on the convention approach. I listed Liberia, Palestine, in India too. The convention are approved as a standard international. This standard need to be applied in appropriate way. In this sense, our job is exactly direct to the citizen with disability, because the sustainability of this convention are based on the voice of the person concerned. That is a very important issue. I listened that say you about the institutionalization, make attention in this country. But I remember 60 years ago in Italy, there are only institutionalization. This means our job, our work as organization, we change the aptitude, and we make the same, because institutionalization maybe can be a resource where don't exist nothing, but it's not respecting human rights. That is clear. The second point, and I am very brief, is related about how working. In this sense, for example, we work in psychiatry in China, in Liberia, we work in Indonesia, we work in Mongolia, in Brazil, in the sense that we use the rehabilitation, community-based rehabilitation that frequent not our attention on this issue and are neglect the psychiatric issue in this area, in this standard of activity. Finally, I wish, because the Minister of Palestine are here, to take in account that maybe the Palestine Authority need to take in account persons with disability more. Because we work in Gaza, we are working to make peer council of the emergency, a very innovative in all parts of the world about that. We working in World Bank to support organization persons with disability. The Palestine are approved some years ago, the convention. I think it's important that the Palestinian Authority take in account from the donors this target issue, because this target issue is very active, is very attentive, and at the same time are one of the population of the Palestine need to be supported. Finally, I want to stress, if other organizations here want to work in the field of the international cooperation, to take into account this resource. Is a resource innovative? It's the first time in the world that the Organization of Persons with Disability, Organization on Development working together, and at the same time because the goals is exactly to transfer the advocacy, so the capacity to represent the right of person with disability to the organization and person with disability himself. Thank you.
C'è tempo per altri?
30 secondi per toccare un aspetto. Che ci sia sofferenza nel mondo è un dato di fatto, per le ragioni che qui sono state egregiamente elencate. Cos'è la salute mentale? È stato detto, il problema è l'intervento. E in questo senso, e cito Whittaker, Peter Gotze, diventa un grande affare, soprattutto nei paesi in via di sviluppo. Ho partecipato a un convegno in cui una rappresentante dell'Organizzazione Mondiale della Sanità si definiva salvatrice, definendo delle parole chiave, delle domande per individuare la salute mentale che erano assolutamente improponibili e che venivano affidate addirittura agli assistenti sociali e infermieri. Ora io non vorrei che i paesi del terzo e quarto mondo, dopo essere stati colonizzati, deprivati, emarginati, diventassero, e penso che invece sarà così, terreno di conquista delle case farmaceutiche.
Bene, a questo punto credo che resti solo che ringraziare tutti dell'aver tenuto duro fino a qui e devo ringraziare ancora una volta i relatori che con pochissime eccezioni sono stati nei tempi e quindi continuiamo nelle altre sessioni perché la giornata non è ancora finita. I thank you all. Okay, the translation gave...
Grazie. Mentre noi, while we are waiting for the Mr. Chairman for the final session, which is Gabriele Rocca, World Association of Psychosocial Rehabilitation, we invite you maybe to take a small break or to move, stand up, but we will start with the final session. The final session will be very concentrated. Don't worry, no long presentations. But we will ask the four organizations to represent what they can do in terms of promoting reforms. These are four, in my opinion, the four most important organizations working for reforms in Europe at the moment. So, okay.